Where are we?
Who knows? Dr. Reyes always says the closest town is 20 miles away. But she could be lying.
Very nice.
My best friend Nate and I had a comic book company when we were kids, and we were hugely obsessed with Marvel Comics. And we loved this series called New Mutants. It was like an X-Men horror comic, and they had this story called Demon Bear. We really loved the idea that this was a female-driven X-Men story that was much more metaphysical and strange than anything that's been in an X-Men movie before.
The storyline where a lot of comic aficionados believe that New Mutants kind of hit its own stride that separated it from the mainline X-Men and made its own thing was the Demon Bear saga.
Everything is gonna be okay. You don't have to worry about anything anymore.
New Mutants was very much a traditional sort of comic book series for the first maybe 17 issues, and then an artist named Bill Sienkiewicz came in and gave it kind of the horror bent.
Oh, don't be scared. We'll go to our special place, okay? The smiling men can't get us in our special place.
My involvement with the New Mutants started based on a 30-second conversation with Chris Claremont. I'd finished up a run on Moon Knight, which was my first series. For 3 years, I'd done just that book with a couple of other covers here and there. But at that point, when I was ready to leave, I was looking to really push into different artistic arenas and experiment. They offered me the X-Men, and I turned it down. One, because I didn't want to do a series, and also the X-Men was Marvel's flagship title, and the last thing I wanted to do was come in and then drive it off a cliff. And then when I walked out into the hallway, Chris Claremont asked me if I wanted to do a 3-issue story arc involving a Demon Bear with the New Mutants, which I'd seen, and which I liked it. It just didn't really feel like it was my cup of tea. But when he mentioned it was a Demon Bear story and that it involved dream sequences and like sort of darkness and fantasy and things like that, 30 seconds, I was like, I'm in. Like, I'm in for 3 issues. Of course, after 3 issues, we were having such a great time. I have no desire to do a series turned into doing a series.
IDW, a big comic book company, released an artist select series of Bill Sienkiewicz's work, which is so much our inspiration was his work on this book. And you can kind of see how impressionistic and surreal and dark this art is compared to what you typically see in X-Men books.
The art style was pretty controversial at the time. There was no concern about trying to copy realism.
Working on the Demon Bear saga, the first thing I needed to do was sort of make the characters my own, and I made them much more unique in terms of size. I tried to think of silhouettes, like, Sam was tall, Cannonball, and Ilyana to me was sort of the cutest, most adorable little blonde, but who was an absolute nightmare, like a demon from hell you did not want to mess with.
Now I've known men like you. Men who like to keep children trapped in cages. I've known them. And I've killed them.
I was able to run and not just do a literal bear, but what a demon bear would feel like. So I was able to play with exaggeration. At the time when I was doing the New Mutants, there was really no departure like that.
You can do your best to save a patient. Sometimes the most humane thing to do is put it to sleep.
This was the first X-Men spin-off comic ever, and it was done at a time where the X-Men were thought dead. So Xavier had to bring new students together. So we basically took these characters who are in the New Mutant series and put them in this horror movie.
Really?
What I loved more than anything when I was a kid was Stephen King. And Stephen King was really our biggest influence with this, with this movie in particular, was doing like Stephen King meets John Hughes. I think about Stand By Me, I think about It, I think about these books I read when I was a kid that was so much about the friendship between children and teenagers.
Why are you here?
Because I killed 18 men. One by one.
The actors are bringing in shades through their performances that there was no way I could put into the comic.
The second I talked to Josh for the first time, the first thing I did was go to a comic book store and buy all of them and just basically sit down and start learning and reading. It's a really vivid, colorful world, and there are a lot of characters in them, and sometimes you have to be like, oh my god, wait, but that character did this with this person, and they're all inextricably linked. And so you have to be really switched on when you're reading them, because otherwise you sort of miss little, subplots.
That's some serious body art. Tattoo wasn't painful enough. It wasn't my idea.
We had to make a lot of changes from the comic to make it its own thing. But what we've tried to do is keep all the characters true to the comic and bring them over into this new origin story.
It's Danny. It's all Danny.
I didn't do anything.
You brought this evil here.
I very much love all the X-Men movies, but they're much more grander, operatic science fiction films. I wanted these kids to talk in a way that kids don't typically talk in X-Men movies.
I've never done this before.
With a girl?
With anyone.
It's like Friday the 13th meets like the Breakfast Club, you know? That's how it feels. Like they're a bunch of kids and like they're all from different places. They're kind of getting to know each other. But then there's like really scary stuff going on.
No powers in here. And definitely no fighting.
When Josh sent me the first proposal, pitch, I not only gave my blessing, but I was so honored and blown away because it was like he got it.
Ready, and 3, 2, 1, go!
You look at the comic and it's how do I bring a comic book character to life? It was kind of interesting to kind of play that, to think about that.
Action.
The whole X-Men world, there's sort of global consequences. But with the New Mutants, it's really about the changes that occur when at a very specific age, you're developing social connections, your voice is changing if you're a guy. It's actually kind of a very dangerous, socially awkward, uncomfortable time, and as a metaphor for the mutants, the mutant aspects of it, and the horror aspects of it.
I don't think this is a hospital. The place that I saw it, I think that's where we go when we leave. If we leave.
Adapting any kind of creative work of fiction, like a comic book, into a film, I think it has to do with not only following the simpatico idea, but to know where it fits into the pantheon. Don't try to make oak into pine. Let it be what it is.
If you disobey, or if you try to leave this facility, I have a responsibility to stop you, no matter what it takes.
Doing a superhero movie with no costumes and no supervillain, and to make it character-driven and psychological, and still have all the bells and whistles that make it an X-Men movie.
Josh has made it entirely his own thing. The grin hasn't left my face.